All right, so we're continuing our discussion. Last week I wasn't feeling well, so I missed, and Rich, I actually didn't even listen to class, so I think Rich said he was going to be a multimedia presentation. Was it? Yeah? Oh, good. Rich really did a lot for me last week, and Mark did too, so thanks for all of that, you guys. I want to recap a little bit only because it's been a couple of weeks since we've talked about this. The series that we've been focused on has been drawing nearer to God. And the premise behind this is that we have a God who seeks to have a relationship with us. You know, if you think about it, we have a God who was before time. We have a God who was uncreated, right? He's always been in existence. And yet there was something in the plan of God that caused him to want to share the experience of creation with people like us. Like, it's remarkable. Like, God didn't have to create. I mean, he's this all-created, he's this uncreated being, and he's decided that he wants to share the goodness of creation. He creates this world in which we live. And he causes animals to be, to populate the surface of the globe. And then he decides that he's going to have a creature, mankind, men and women, who will have the intellect to understand that there was in fact a creation and that there is in fact a creator God. Why did God do that? Like, what's the idea behind that? And I think the idea is that God wanted to share the goodness, his goodness, with us. And this gives me the idea that he wants us to draw near to him. He wants us to have a relationship with him. And I just think that that's the premise. And then in our lives, I think that stuff happens, right? When we become overwhelmed with the cares of this world, or we become overwhelmed with, just life. And our focus tends to drift at times. And I know I'm not speaking just for myself, but certainly I am speaking for myself. Right? There are times when I feel as though I'm going through the motions, or I feel as though I need to improve or strengthen this connection that I have with God. And sometimes it's not like flipping a light switch. It's not just simply saying, I want to draw closer to God again and like have it be okay. Oh, good, here I am. I think it requires at times a concerted effort. It requires a disciplined focus. At least it does for me. And that is what prompted this series of classes. And the big picture, I guess, is that there are many different ways that individuals can find this closeness with God. And one way is not the only way to find closeness to God. It might be that we find closeness to God when we open the Scriptures and we read the Bible and we sort of delve into the world, into the Word. And that, for you or me, or at a particular time in my life, can be very impactful. But at other times, or for other people, the study, the mindfulness that goes into studying the Scriptures doesn't necessarily cause them to feel close to God, because they have a different taste bud, right? We all have different approaches to God that can strengthen us. And we looked at a number of them. So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but one way that people can draw close to God in our first class was drawing close to God through nature, contemplating God, thinking about God when we see the beauty of nature. We talked about Jesus going up onto the mountain. We talked about him going out into the Mount of Olives as was his custom. Like these were places where Jesus could feel close to God. David was able to, in his Psalms, talk about the beauty that he saw in nature and how it caused him to feel close to God. And even in our own hymns, how great thou art. When I survey the, what's the hymn? I'm losing it now. Say it again. Yeah, how great thou art was one that we talked about. All creatures great and strong, all creatures of our God and King. These are other hymns that cause us to, just look around and, realize that this is an amazing place that God has created. So that's one approach. Another approach is through tradition, through ritual, through the comfort and the familiar feeling of ritual and tradition. We talked about the breaking of bread. When we're here at a memorial meeting and the presider says we do this in remembrance of him, and the cup is passed or the bread is passed, and we have that quiet moment of reflection. These rituals, or being at a baptism and seeing a young person or an adult being immersed in water, causes us to just get the juices flowing, right? And we talked about your baptism, right? When we were all online, and just what a uplift that was. And I think this is a second way through tradition and ritual. A third way was through intellect. This is what I just talked about, where we love God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's through studying the scriptures or preparing Bible classes or listening to Bible talks and podcasts, reading books, reading magazines. We think of Jesus as a young boy. Mustn't I be about my Father's business? He was in the temple courts studying and learning, and this caused him to feel close to God. And then the last one that we talked about last week was contemplating God by helping others. The parable of the sheep and the goats. Let's just go there. I don't know that we got into a lot of the details on this a couple of weeks ago. So Matthew chapter 25 is where I'd like you to go. And we'll look at the 34th verse. So this Matthew chapter 25 is where Jesus is giving several of these parables. He speaks about the parable of the 10 virgins and the parable of the talents. And what we're going to focus on is this parable of the sheep and the goats. And in the 34th verse, it says, "The king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed of my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For,'" and here's the point we're trying to get at with this idea of loving God by loving others. We can draw close by helping other people, and that causes us to feel close to God. So Jesus says in the 35th verse, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. And I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or need clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these my brothers of mine, you did for me." So this is that idea that when we help others, when we do things for others, we can draw closer to God and to his Son. So let me just pause there. Anybody have any experiences in helping others that has caused them to feel this closeness with God? Somebody want to pass a microphone around? Yeah, Chris?
I've got it.
You got it? Okay. So, Sandy, I think of you a lot when I feel like this is sort of this is where you connect with God, when you're able to, organize or do something for other people. That to me is sort of your love language, I know that Anita is in the other room, but Anita was doing the knitting. Phil, what was that called, the knitting program that Anita was doing? Knit Together, Knit Together. And this is where a number of people would get together either online or in person. They would knit things and they would distribute their knit afghans to people, and it was a comfort, right? Anybody else have experiences with this sort of thing? I know Wayne's not here this weekend, but Wayne did a lot of work with Habitat for Humanity. That's an example of giving to others and drawing strength and feeling a connection to God. Jesus says that if we give a glass of water in his name, right? He uses that expression. And when we are not only doing good works, but doing it in Jesus' name, we are doing these things for, because we're trying to live a Christ-like life. These are the things that I think can draw us nearer. I think of Nancy Rice, and I see Kathy's in the room now, but, for years after memorial service, Nancy and Kathy would often retire to a back room and they would offer a prayer, the two of them, for people who are in need. Right? What a great example for us. This is them doing something for others. It's not heavy lifting, right? But it's something that we can all do. I remember Peg Eagles once making a comment to Sandy. Do you remember what I'm going to say, Sandy? Do you want to just share it?
She said there aren't many things that I can do, but I can pray for others.
Yeah.
So,
as Peg was getting up there in age, she couldn't get around much. She wasn't making meals for people. She wasn't getting in the car and driving to visit people. But what could she do? She could pray for people. And sometimes, when we're not near to God, when we're in one of these spiritual ruts that we can sometimes fall into, we need people to pray for us because we're having a hard time ourselves praying for ourselves, right? So this was an example of, one of the ways that we can help others. Yeah.
I'm reminded of Bob Dixon, and into his 90s, still, serving and greeting everyone at the door with a smile, and doing the emblems and just taking the time to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And he was a very unassuming man, but I remember him catching me at the door many times on my way out to just ask me what I was up to, and we got to talking about just different things that I thought, wow, I didn't realize this guy had such a breadth of knowledge about so many things. So there's really, you never know how a comment or a handshake or a smile can just change the direction of somebody's day. And even we started talking about home repair and different things that I needed to do, and he gave me some suggestions. So
no kidding.
It's just really, really wonderful that we all really have that capability. We don't have to be super outgoing or feel like, oh, I'm a great communicator, a handshake and a smile and a hug says a lot.
Yeah, it sure does. You know, I thought of Bob yesterday, Jason. My mom and dad are back in town, and I was over at their house, and there's a beautiful picture of Bob Dixon that Mom's got in a frame, on her coffee table.
No grandchildren, no children,
Just Bob, yeah, yeah. Bob had no children or grandchildren. It was just Bob. Yeah, yeah. And Ruthie, yeah.
you know, it's tough because she can't hear too well, but she was happy to have us. She was happy to have us come see her, and we felt really good seeing her. And take communion with her.
And what?
And take communion with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? Okay, so what we've just talked about is sort of recaps of what we've been talking about over the last 3 weeks. The last two sort of pathways to draw nearer to God that I want to focus on is the first one we'll look at is drawing near to God through solitude. Through solitude. The second one is drawing close to God through community. Opposite ends of the spectrum, right? If you are an introvert, coming to an environment where there's all sorts of people can be challenging for some. And it clearly is important that we meet together, that we do not forsake the gathering together, as the writer to the Hebrews says. So even if that's sort of out of our comfort zone, coming into the community does a lot. It builds up the community when we see one another. But also, if you are an introvert, you might find that personally, this quiet time of introspection and silence can be most impactful in helping you draw closer to God. And this is one of this is one of the things that really helps me. This quiet time, this time of meditation. Turn with me to Mark chapter 1. We're going to look at the 35th verse. So Mark chapter 1 is this, it's obviously the beginning of the gospel. It's thought that Mark was the first of the gospels to have been written. It starts with the story of John the Baptist preparing the way for Jesus. Jesus going into the wilderness for 40 days where he's tempted. Comes out of the wilderness. He begins to call the first disciples. He goes into Capernaum near his hometown and he's performing miracles and the crowds are gathering. He's healing all of these people. And then we come to verse 35 and here's how Jesus handles this. This is how he takes care of himself. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. That to me is just so telling. There are times, brothers and sisters, where we need to take care of ourselves, where we need to sort of withdraw to this solitary place, where we can sort of remove ourselves from the cares of the world and we can just be alone with our God. And I think that's what Jesus was doing here. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts or comments about that. Turn to Psalm 19. This is a wonderful psalm. I remember as a young baptized brother, I was doing my Bible readings, and I came to Psalm 19, and it was as though I had read it for the first time. I just found it really, really impactful to me. And it was like one of the first passages in my Bible that I underlined. I remember that. And it was this 14th verse. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Right? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart. This meditation is what I'm focusing on here. There are times when it's good for us to just sit alone with our God and to meditate and to think. How we go about doing that might be different for you as it is for me. It might be that we meditate on a particular verse in the Bible. It might be that I just think of this verse that I just read. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my rock and my... maybe I just think about that verse. Think about, each of the phrases of that verse. Maybe I just let it sit with me. Or maybe I pick up a hymn book, and I read through the words of a hymn. And I just think about the words that are written here. These aren't inspired words, but they're words that are helpful. Judy, I hope you don't mind. I'm not going to call on you, but I'm going to share something. I have in my hand... Do you know what I have in my hand, Judy? I have in my hand page after page after page of poems that were written by Sister Judy Salomon. Okay? And there are times where I would like to sit and read one of these poems and think about and meditate on what's being said. Now, I've just pulled out two, kind of, sort of randomly, Judy. May I read them? The first one is entitled, He is All in All. Picture yourself now, brothers and sisters, in the middle of December, on a dark, cold winter day. Gray clouds have tarried long with drops of rain and ice. The thought of spring arriving would certainly make it nice. We're in the grip of winter, depressing as that can be, yet the sun rose this morning and dazzled every tree. Its rays caught every facet of crystal that they wore, delighting all who saw it so much they looked for more. Diamonds seemingly scattered o'er the hills afar and wide, the river's edge encrusted with silver on each side. The air was crisp and clear. The sky was azure blue. The smallest weed looked splendid, all dressed in winter's dew. Oh, how I longed for spring. 'Twas my earnest inner wish. Had my prayers been answered, I would have missed all this. It reminded me of life as each tribulation came. I'd forget to see the beauty and chose to feel the pain. For as it is with seasons, the same for this life of mine, God is in control of all, and all is in His time. Judy Salomon, March 5, 1995. Beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? So to take a hymn, the lyrics of a hymn, or the words of a poem, and to read these things in a quiet place and just contemplate these things. As Judy sort of exhorts us in this poem, that God is in control. God is in control of all, and all is in His time. Powerful. You want to hear another? Yeah? This one from 1998. We're going back into the archives. This one's entitled Today. Today is a gift. It's all that I have. Help me rejoice in it and be glad. For I should ponder. I'm going to put this here. You able to see that? No, it doesn't work, Phil. All right. Help me to rejoice in it and be glad, for I should ponder about the morrow. Then my today will be tainted with sorrow. Worry serves nothing but to rob my today. Lord, help me cherish what you send my way. I must forget yesterday and that left undone, for I have today and only this one. If I use it wisely to its very best, life will be better with fewer regrets. For over so much I have no control. That's why my God is out on patrol. He has numbered the very hairs of my head. With Him in charge, I have nothing to dread. Help me surrender what's not mine to do and trust in His love, everlasting and true. So Judy's got a number of these poems, and I think they're absolutely wonderful. And for me, reading your poems, Judy, has really helped me. In this quiet meditation time, to feel a closeness to God. So thanks for that. Anybody have any experiences with meditation? Makes the time go by? Yeah. I was at the Manuka Bible School 5 or 6 years ago, and Brother John Launchbury led a evening program on guided meditation. Has anybody ever heard that expression, guided meditation? It was really quite interesting. We got, those that wanted to went to an area and sat in a room, and we just got comfortable. Some people sat on the floor, some people sat in chairs. And we just sort of got quiet. And then John began to sort of lead us on things to think about. And it was really fascinating. And I know there are a number of apps that you can get on your phone that will lead you in some guided meditation. The idea behind it is just to be quiet and free from distraction. How many times have you sat there in meeting on a Sunday? Maybe it's that quiet time where we pass the bread and the wine, and we are sitting in quiet contemplation, and your mind goes to what you have to do when you get home. Or your mind is thinking about a particularly uncomfortable conversation that you might have had with someone. Or your mind is thinking about a health concern or a financial concern. Or, these are things that just like pop into our minds, right? And so meditation is a way that trains us to let those things come into our mind but quickly leave our mind. It lets us have room for God. And I just find it helpful. So I have sometimes used guided meditation as a way of helping. I had a nice conversation with Brother Steve Hulverson a number of months back about meditation, and he has talked about how helpful he has found it. And meditation can be as simple as, contemplating the Word, ruminating on a particular verse or thinking about that. Or it could be as complex as, getting an app and listening to some guided meditation. So the point, though, is that it helps some people draw close to God through solitude. Nate, was it you that talked about an electronic Sabbath? Was that your expression? You borrowed it from someone. What was that like? Here, grab a mic. Don't make Sharon run down with the mic, and definitely don't make Gordon run down with the mic.
We've explored different applications of Sabbath in our household, but I think
It's probably hard to do when you get a bunch of little ones running around.
Yeah, well, we try to preload, pre-make meals even on a Saturday, so that Sunday it's a little more relaxed. But yeah, we've tried the electronic Sabbath as well. Just put the phone, be very intentional about phone usage. You can actually see the tracking of the time spent on it. There's a huge drop off on Sundays unless it's critical communication. Just try to leave that in a spot, or whether it's in a bedroom, and then just be present in family. I think that's been really helpful for us. Just to kind of reset, recalibrate, detox, if it would, from technology before we start the week.
John Perks came and did a study weekend a number of years ago, and he spoke about electronics. And one of the things that I remember from his classes was this idea that many of the high-tech companies, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, many of these companies are hiring the same engineers that were responsible for slot machines at Las Vegas. And the point that he made was a slot machine is designed to capture the attention of the person who is feeding this machine with nickels or dollars or $20 bills, I don't know. And it's so addictive that you can't walk away, right? The casinos know that the longer you sit there at the slot machine, the better off it is for them. And so it's designed in such a way that you get this stimulus that says, oh, I can't leave now because the next nickel I put in may cause me to be a winner. And with all of the bells and the turning of the dials, it just sort of captivates you so that you can't get out of your seat. And now with our phones, whether it's the thumbs up emoji, where you like something, or you get a ding that says here is a notification, it's the same sort of thing. It's designed just as a slot machine to keep you in the seat. Instagram and Facebook and all of these apps are designed to keep you looking at your phone. The longer you're looking at the phone, the more ad revenue they get. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up for each of you to decide. But the point is, it's hard for a lot of people to put that phone down. And that's why I think this idea, Nate, of an electronic Sabbath is so powerful. That if you can get in the habit of saying, okay, on a particular afternoon or a particular day or between the hours of, such and such, I am not going to have any phone usage at all. It just allows us to connect more deeply with our family. It helps us connect more deeply with our God because we don't have this constant dinging in our phone and in our mind that sort of fills our mind with clutter. News cycles are that way. A lot of things are that way. So the electronic Sabbath can be really helpful. I'll just give you a couple of thoughts that I had. I have found it particularly helpful to have some quiet time in the morning. To get up, for me, I sometimes suffer with seasonal depression, and for me to go and sit on my front porch and sort of feel the sunshine on my face, it's like, yeah, I'm in my happy place, right? And so if I can go out and do that and sort of offer a prayer or think about things that I'm grateful for, I have journaled in the past sometimes, 3 things that I'm grateful for today. These things can be helpful. So we can draw close to God through solitude, through silence, through simplicity. Downsizing possessions, downsizing interests. These are things that some people have talked about as being helpful in drawing close to God. Having alone time, whether it's walking or sitting by the water or exercising by yourself, these things can be a time of solitude. Keeping a journal, keeping a gratitude journal, writing these things down, these things can be helpful. And of course, if you want to read some poems, Judy, I'd love to share some of these if I can. Really helpful. Last thing we're going to talk on just real quickly is drawing close to God through community, loving God through fellowship with like-minded believers. To gather together, to have a discussion like this today where, we're getting input from so many different people is really helpful for me, and I hope it is for you. To have a Bible class where there are many people that are attending and listening, these things can build us up. Attending Bible schools, having social events with our brothers and sisters, praise and singing of hymns together is a great way. And let's just close with Hebrews chapter 10. I referenced this passage earlier, but I'll just read it so we see the context. Hebrews chapter 10. This is in a section of the letter entitled "A Call to Preserve." Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, opened for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let's draw near to God with a sincere heart, in full assurance of faith. Right? This is what we're talking about. The whole series has been on how do we draw near to God. And the exhorter here in Hebrews 10 is saying, let's draw near to God with a sincere heart. How do we do that? By having our bodies washed with pure water. Let's hold unswervingly, verse 23, to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. As Richard Lee says, we have a God who cannot lie. Our God is faithful. And let's consider how we can spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Let's not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let's encourage one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. And so when we meet together, brothers and sisters, when the CYC gets together, when we get together, we can build each other up, and this process can often cause us to feel a closeness to our God.